these things standing up here? You guys know what those big things were? What were they? The three wise men, the three kings, right? Yeah, because today is their day. Today we get to celebrate them. And their trip to see baby Jesus and... Hold up. All right, let's try this again. So their trip to see baby Jesus, right? And you know, when we go on a trip, what do you use to know where you're going? Sunny? A map. Do you know how to read a real map? Kinda, because that's better than me, because I do not.
They followed the star.
They followed the star, but what do we do? You know what I do?
We use maps. We use our GPS.
I use my phone, and not only that, but my watch will buzz when it's time for me to turn. So I really don't have to think too much about it at all, because my watch goes off, and it has a little arrow, and it tells me what way to go, because it's linked to my phone, or I put my phone in and it's linked to my car radio, and it comes through. So I don't have to think too much about it. But you know, those wise men, they didn't have maps. They didn't have phones. Like Aiden said, they followed a star. I don't think their watch told them when to turn. How hard would it be to travel if all you were doing was looking for a star? It would be tiring. It would be hard. How long do you guys think it took them?
A while.
A while? It did.
A lot of days.
A lot of days. It took them a lot of days. It took them almost 2 years of days to find the baby Jesus. So that's a long time, isn't it? Yeah. So they brought Jesus gifts, right? And can you hand one of those out to everybody for me? Because I'm kind of, my hands are crazy today. So we're going to have a quick prayer, and then we're going to go, those of us that are going to Way We Worship are going to learn more about those wise men. And those of you that are staying in here, Pastor Lance is going to talk about it. Thank you, sir. All right. So while Aiden hands those out, let's have a quick prayer. Dear God, we thank you for these children, for their excitement to be with you and to follow you. And help us to remember as we go into the week to never stop following your star. Amen. If you're going to Way We Worship, come with me. If you're going back to your parents, you can go back to your parents.
That's very nice. Follow that star because today is Epiphany. Today is Epiphany. I don't get to say that every year because you see, Epiphany is always on January 6th, but January 6th is not always on a Sunday. So it seems to me that we would want to make the very best of this situation. Epiphany is all about the star, the light of Christ coming into the world. And these wise men, wise kings, magi, who come from afar following the star to the place where the child is. This story is found only in the Gospel of Matthew. It's not in Luke. Luke, you know, where we have the shepherds and the angels and the baby wrapped in swaddling cloth and lying in a manger. All of that is in Luke, not in Matthew. Matthew doesn't mention any of that. Instead, Matthew has a very different story. I'm going to read today from Matthew, the 2nd chapter, the first 12 verses. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is this child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all of Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. And they told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. And then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they heard the king, they set out. And there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Epiphany used to be such a great celebration. It still is in some parts of the world, but more about that in just a little bit. Now, for some 13 centuries, from the 4th century until the beginning of the 19th century, Epiphany was a great celebration. It was as big, perhaps even bigger, than the celebration of Christmas Day. There is Christmas Eve, right? Then there are the 12 days of Christmas, then the 12th night, and then today, Epiphany. The word epiphany comes from Greek, and it means to show or to put into the light. In reference to Jesus being shown to the world, Jesus being revealed to the world by God. The Magi, these three wise men, if indeed there were three, they are the first Gentiles, the first outsiders who first recognized this child as a king and as a godly envoy. And so they follow a star and arrive to worship the child and, of course, bring him presents. Now, tradition of the church says that there were the three kings, the three wise men. Truth of the matter is, Matthew does not specifically say how many there were. The number 3, can you guess, comes from the 3 gifts that the wise men bring, these gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. The gold, of course, representing Jesus' royal standing. The frankincense, an incense used in religious worship, was to signify his divine origin. And the myrrh is an embalming herb to signify Jesus' mortality. Sometime in the 7th century, these wise men acquired names. And even today, we know them as Melchior, Casper, and Balthazar. One to represent all of Europe, one to represent all of Asia, and one to represent the continent of Africa. Again, none of this is in the Bible. None of this can be found in the story that Matthew gives us. These are traditions that are built upon by the church over centuries. In many cultures, even today, it is Epiphany and the arrival of the wise men that leads to a time of gift giving and exchanging of gifts. In several parts of the world, children leave their shoes out for candy and small gifts that are brought by the wise men and discovered on the morning of January 6th. And sometimes the children even leave straw out for the king's camels, much the way, sometimes our children leave out food for Santa's reindeer. Today in Scotland and England, there are star singers. These are groups of crown-wearing children who make their rounds through the neighborhood on January 6th. They carry a pole with a cutout star on top of it, and they knock on people's doors and sing star carols in exchange for candy and small gifts. Now, something like this also happens in other parts of Europe. In Germany, the Czech Republic, Austria, it's even bigger than that. The Star Singers are organized by schools, so they are large bands of children that go around singing songs, and they chalk the doors. Have you ever heard of that? That's a blessing that they write upon the doors of the people who answer the door and listen to their star song. And this blessing starts with the first two numbers of the year, 2, 0. And then you will see a C for Casper, an M for Melchior, and then a B for Balthazar, and then plus the last two numbers of the year. This year it will be a 1, 9. The blessing 2-0 plus C plus M plus B plus 1, 9. It is a way to signify that for 2019 years since the first visit of the Magi, the people have known the light of Christ in the world, and it's a blessing over their door. Today, 300,000 children are expected to participate in Germany, singing their star songs, chalking the door, and raising millions of dollars for mission and charities. Did you have any idea all of that goes on around this wonderful day of Epiphany? In Prague, there is the traditional Three Kings swim to commemorate Epiphany in the Volta River, and that river usually is frozen this time of year. In Mexico and in Central American countries, this is the Dia de los Reyes, the Day of the Kings, and it's celebrated with parties and parades and the eating of the Rosca de Reyes, the king's ring or the king's cake. It's a tasty bread into which is baked a tiny figurine of a baby that represents the baby Jesus. And the fortunate ones who get a piece of the Rosca de Reyes or the king's cake and find the baby Jesus, oh, they are blessed. But it also means that they have to host the next feast in their home. And the next feast is Candlemas. And I'm looking over at some people that we talked about Candlemas at the Christmas party. Do you remember the Candlemas? It happens in February. And the person that finds the baby Jesus has to cook tamales for everyone when they come to their home. It's a wonderful blessing. This is such a great, significant day of celebration among Christians throughout so much of the world, and I just didn't want us to let it go by without some fun of our own. So that's why we had the Kings with us here in worship as the band played Celebrate by Kool and the Gang. And we have King's Cake today. After this service, go out into the foyer, and there are pieces of King's Cake for everyone. And if you find the baby Jesus, be sure to tell everybody we'll be at your house for tamales in just a couple of weeks. But do stop by for some King's Cake. See if you can find the baby. And in the spirit of a party, here's a couple of very special slides. Memes from the internet. We can't celebrate without memes anymore. The kings bring gold and frankincense, but wait, there's myrrh. May take you a little while. Nothing like a bad pun. And then there's this. After the 3 wise men departed, the 3 wiser women came with casseroles and diapers. They got it much better than the 3 wise men. I don't know about you, but my imagination is taken up, it's captured by these kings or magi or wise men or whatever you call them. The truth is we know so very little about them. Matthew simply says they're from the east, they follow a star, and they come and bring presents and pay homage and worship the child. We don't know their actual number. We don't know their true identities, or where even they specifically came from. We don't even know when precisely they arrived in Bethlehem, but some experts suggest that it might have been up to 2 years after the birth of the child. And while we love to put the kings into our nativity scenes, well, that's Luke's story. Matthew says that these kings came and made their visit to a house. Did you hear that? Not a stable, not to a child wrapped in swaddling cloth, to a home where Mary allows them to come in. But my imagination is taken because I wonder, what motivated them? What caused them to load up everything and take off after this light in the sky to see what God might have to show them? These wise calculators making their meticulous mathematical calculations as to when the star first appeared, determining where in the sky the star was located, relating it somehow geographically to the region, and what drove them out on that journey. What was it? What was it in their souls, in their hearts, that beckoned them to set out and follow that star? You remember the story we read on Christmas Eve, the story from Luke about the child born in the stable. A child born in the stable that is an answer to Judah's longing and aching for a Messiah. The angels sing and the shepherds come running and then proclaim that this child is the long-awaited one, the anointed one, the Messiah, the Savior that would set them free from the oppression that they were under Roman rule. But Matthew tells a very different story. Here, we don't have the people of Abraham and Isaac and Joseph and David. We have foreigners, we have others, we have outsiders. And Matthew describes how they also have a longing, a desire to come and see this child that is born not only as a Messiah for the Jews, but who is born as a king for the world. And in telling that story, Matthew reminds us that the whole truth of this story is not just found in the events as they may or may not have happened some 2,000 years ago. That this story's truth is found as it relates to and connects with our story. How it is that we come to discover and see what God is showing us. Not just a child born so long ago, but a Christ that is alive and available to us even today. How is this Christ made visible to us? You see, the whole truth of this story is known in how it connects to our story and our truth, our journey, our discovery, our epiphany. Those wonderful words we sang just a moment ago, in the quiet of the night, under the wide expanse of sky, I am alone and asking questions why. What is this longing in my heart? What's the reason for my life? And a solitary light is shining, calling. Follow that star. Follow that star. Uncover the mystery of who you are. Like the light of early dawn, I see the promise there beyond, and a hope within begins to rise. Love is calling to my heart, reaching deep into my soul, and reveals to me the reason for living. See, it's our epiphany. Our coming again to behold the Christ, our new understanding, our discovery, when our mind is enlightened and our heart is set afire. I think of those star singers, those children in Europe wearing their paper crowns and meandering about with a golden star held up on a pole, singing their star songs. They are the star singers, carrying boldly the light of Christ out into the world, or at least at least into their own neighborhood, singing of this king, a king that is born for all people. All people. So they carry their star and they sing their songs that others might be enjoined to this epiphany, might share in this discovery, that the world might have an epiphany and know that Jesus is the light that God sends. I want us to be star singers. I want us to carry the light out into the world and sing our song that the world might know and have an epiphany as to who Jesus is for them in their lives. I want us to be the star singers. I want us to be the light flingers. I want us to be the news bringers. I want us to be the joy ringers. That the light might continue to dawn upon a darkened world. Jesus Christ, light of the world, has come. We have psalms.